Get out! You were always a burden, Dorian shouted, his voice echoing through the grand hallway as he hurled her suitcase down the polished wooden stairs. The suitcase flew open midair, and her clothes scattered across the foyer like fallen leaves in a storm. For a moment, Solene stood frozen at the top of the stairs, her breath caught in her chest. Dorian's mother, Greta, stood behind him, arms folded, a faint smirk dancing on her lips as if she'd waited years for this moment. Around them, Dorian's relatives, gathered for their usual Sunday brunch, sat in stunned silence. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. Her humiliation was just another dish on their family table. But that was not where Solene's story began. That moment, as soul-crushing as it was, came much later. It started 3 months earlier, in a much quieter room, her childhood home. The scent of lavender still clung to the curtains, the ones her mother had sewn herself. Solene moved slowly through the living room, the silence broken only by the sound of cardboard boxes being taped shut. Her parents had died just weeks before in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Now she stood in the space they built together, sorting through memories and grief. A wedding photo sat crooked on the mantel, her father's tux a little too big, her mother's veil slightly askew, both of them smiling with real love. Solene, I brought more boxes from the garage, Dorian's voice drifted in. She turned to see him walking in with a stack, concern etched on his face. Thanks, she whispered, wiping her eyes. I didn't think going through their things would hurt this much. He placed the boxes down and wrapped his arms around her. You don't have to do it alone, he murmured. Solene leaned into Dorian's chest, his steady heartbeat grounding her as tears silently streaked down her face. We have until the end of the month, he said gently. That's what the estate agent said. Solene nodded, the words sounding so cold and transactional. I just don't know where I'll go after this, she admitted. You'll come stay with me, he replied without hesitation. With us. Solene hesitated. She had only met Greta once, in a restaurant where the older woman gave her a polite smile and little else. Are you sure your mother's okay with that? Dorian kissed her forehead. It's my house too. I inherited it from my grandfather, and I want you there. With nowhere else to go, Solene accepted. 2 days later, she pulled into the driveway of Dorian's family home, a large colonial with ivy climbing up the stone walls, the kind of house that looked like it belonged on postcards. Dorian carried her suitcases while she clutched a single box of keepsakes. Greta opened the door with a tight smile. Solene, dear. What a difficult time this must be, she said, barely brushing cheeks with her. Dorian, please show her to the guest room. The guest room? Dorian frowned. Mom, I told you, Solene would be staying in my room. Greta's eyebrows rose. Unmarried? Under my roof? I don't think so. What would Reverend Halen say? Solene flushed. The guest room is fine, she murmured. That night, as she unpacked, Greta appeared in the doorway. So you're a nurse? Solene nodded. I work at Eastfield General. Greta's lips curled. Better than nothing, I suppose. The first few weeks in Greta's house were filled with unspoken rules and hidden judgments. Greta's cold civility never warmed, and Dorian's attention started to slip. He left early for work and came home late. Solene buried herself in 12-hour hospital shifts, caring for others while barely holding herself together. At first, Dorian was kind. He checked on her, made tea, told her he was proud. But slowly, the questions began. Who were you texting? Why didn't you call me during your break? Then the control seeped in. You don't need to see her, he said when Solene planned to meet a friend. Her husband left her. Bad influence. Solene brushed it off, blaming stress and grief. But it didn't stop. Soon after, money became the next topic. When Solene offered to contribute to groceries or bills, Dorian refused. Keep your money. You've been through enough, he said. But her paycheck became his responsibility. He borrowed for vague reasons and soon he was buying things for himself, new ties, new shoes. You work hard. Let me take care of things, he'd say, swiping her debit card. Greta wasn't any kinder. You put too much salt in the soup, she'd say. You're not used to real cooking. Solene tried harder. She brought home cookies from the hospital cafeteria. How economical, Greta sniffed. Solene swallowed her pride and kept going. One evening, after losing a patient during her shift, Solene came home exhausted. She collapsed onto the edge of the bed and began scrolling through nursing job listings. A higher-paying position at Haven Medical caught her eye. Haven's 40 minutes away, Dorian said sharply when he saw the listing. I need better hours and more money, she said firmly. Dorian scoffed. You live here rent-free. What do you need money for? Solene sat up straighter. I don't want to depend on you. I want my own life. Is that what this is? Independence, he shouted. I took you in when no one else wanted you. Greta's footsteps paused outside the room. Please calm down, Solene whispered. His eyes narrowed. Apply, but don't expect me to rearrange my life for your ambitions. The next day, Dorian acted like nothing had happened. He kissed her forehead before work. See you tonight, love, he said cheerfully. Solene stood motionless in the kitchen, a cold knot in her stomach. She decided to finish cleaning out her parents' garage while he was gone. The house was quiet when she arrived. Solene stepped into her father's old workshop, where dust danced in the sunlight. In the corner sat the steel toolbox her dad had always treasured. She tugged open a stuck drawer, and something strange caught her eye, a false bottom. Beneath it were neat stacks of $100 bills and an envelope with her name. Her hands trembled. Solene trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in her father's familiar handwriting. So, if you're reading this, we're gone. This is for your future. It's $1.1 million from your grandfather's life insurance. We never told you. Use it wisely. Don't trust easily, people change around money. Love always, Dad. She sat in silence, the weight of love and grief pressing on her. When her hands finally stopped shaking, she made a plan. She split the cash across 3 banks and hid the letter in her bra. Then she restored the false bottom in the garage and locked it up. As she drove back, Dorian called. Where are you? I've been worried. Just clearing the last things, she replied. Be home soon. When Solene walked in, Dorian pulled her into a hug, tense and rehearsed. I need to talk to you, he said, leading her to the table. Greta sat nearby, quietly with a forced smile. There's this investment opportunity, Dorian began. Real estate. One-time chance. We'd be set for life. All I need is whatever you get from selling your parents' house. Solene blinked. There's nothing left, Dorian. It all went to debts and bills. He frowned. No retirement accounts? No insurance? No, she lied. They lived paycheck to paycheck. That night, while he showered, Solene checked his laptop. An email from a man named Cyrus read. Final notice. Payment due. She hesitated but opened the folder labeled statements, credit cards, loans, collection notices, over $400,000 in debt. Her stomach dropped. She closed the laptop just as the water stopped running. Dorian returned, cheerful and affectionate. Let's have dinner tomorrow. My treat, he said. The next day, he proposed. Let's get married. Just us. Next week. No more waiting. Solene stared at him. Why now? He squeezed her hand. Life's too short. Your parents showed us that. Against her better judgment, she agreed. They married at the courthouse. Greta, her sister, and a few cousins attended. In the restroom afterward, Greta whispered, "Now that you're family, let's talk household contributions. Nathaniel says your parents' estate is settling soon." Solene's reply was calm. There is no estate. Only debts. Greta's eyes narrowed. That's not what he thinks. That night, Solene lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling as Dorian snored beside her. Every loving word he'd spoken, every comforting gesture, now rang hollow. At 2 a.m., he slipped out of bed, taking his phone into the bathroom. She followed quietly, pressing her ear to the door. "This is Dorian Bellamy, regarding the Oakshade property," he whispered. "Yes, I know foreclosure has started. But listen, I just got married. My wife has an inheritance coming. I just need 30 more days." Solene stepped back in silence, her heart pounding. The truth was now painfully clear. He hadn't married her out of love, he'd married her for money he thought she had. For a week, Solene played the role of the doting newlywed. She smiled when Dorian kissed her goodbye, nodded as Greta rattled off critiques about her laundry folding, and kept quiet while her mind worked overtime. She researched property records, traced loan details, and quietly met with Sarah, a childhood friend who now worked in real estate. "He listed the house," Sarah said, showing her a screen. "Below market. Desperate." Solene explained everything: Dorian's debt, the secret call, and the inheritance. Sarah blinked in disbelief. "That's not just shady, it's calculated." Solene nodded. "He wants to sell the house and use my inheritance to pay off his mess. But I have another idea." At a diner far from town, Solene outlined her plan. With Sarah's help, she would create a shell company and buy the house anonymously, offer cash, slightly above asking, and add a 60-day occupancy clause. Sarah frowned. "Are you sure? This is huge." Solene looked out the window. "He married me to save himself. I'll make sure he gets exactly what he deserves." Within 48 hours, the listing went live. Solene, through her LLC, made the offer. It was accepted without question. That night, Dorian came home grinning. "Good news," he said, pouring whiskey. "The house sold. Everything's finally turning around." Solene smiled back. "That's wonderful." The following Monday, Dorian announced a sudden business trip to Chicago. "Just 2 nights," he promised. "When I get back, we'll talk about our future." The moment he left, Solene met Sarah and an attorney named Leora. The papers were ready. Solene signed every page, shaking but certain. "Congratulations," Leora said. "You're now the owner of 782 Oakshade Lane." Solene wrote the check from one of her hidden accounts. That night, she returned to the house, her house, walking the halls with new eyes. Greta folded laundry, unaware of the shift in ownership. "Did you need something?" she asked coldly. "No," Solene replied with a small smile. "I have everything I need." For the next few weeks, Solene kept the secret. Dorian became uncharacteristically affectionate. He brought her flowers, defended her against Greta's jabs. "She's my wife. Show her respect," he said once at dinner, surprising them both. But Solene knew it was an act. She kept her silence, waiting. At night, she stared at the locked drawer containing the deed in her name, each breath strengthening her resolve. One evening, as they lay in bed, Dorian whispered, "We'll be okay now. Everything's coming together." Solene nodded but said nothing. In her heart, she was already gone. As the closing date passed, Dorian grew tense. The money should be here by now, he muttered, checking his phone constantly. The realtor said. The buyer was solid, so played innocent. Maybe there's a delay in the transfer. These things take time. Dorian looked at her sharply. What do you know about real estate? He snapped. Solene shrugged. Not much. Meanwhile, Greta became more invasive. Her porcelain birds reappeared on every shelf. Solene's books were boxed up and stored in the basement. This house should reflect the Bellamy legacy, Greta said, not someone else's clutter. Solene nodded silently, her fingers curling around her house keys. That evening, Solene found her side of the closet reduced to a single row. Greta's coats took up the rest. In the bathroom, her things were packed away to make space for Greta's expensive creams. Your mother is taking over, she told Dorian. He scoffed, she's lived here her whole life. You've been here 5 minutes. Maybe try adapting. His coldness was a slap. The man who once held her through grief was gone. Now, there was only calculation in his eyes. The next day, she overheard his conversation with the bank. The buyer owns the house already, he said, stunned. How can that be? I never finished. His voice trailed into silence. That night, Dorian came home drunk. Solene pretended to sleep as he stumbled in, cursing under his breath. The next morning, Greta announced a dinner party for Dorian's colleagues. Very important. You'll be present, of course, she said, despite your lack of social graces. Solene dressed in a simple navy dress and joined the guests at the long dining table. Dorian barely acknowledged her. He was too busy laughing with a man named Everett. This is my wife, Solene, he finally said, gesturing vaguely. Everett's expression was unreadable. A nurse, right? Cardiac unit, Solene said. We save lives. Dorian chuckled, she means well, but she doesn't contribute much financially. The room went silent. After the guests left, Solene confronted Dorian in the kitchen. How could you humiliate me like that? She demanded. Like what? He slurred. I'm being honest. You've given nothing to this household. You're a liability. Solene leaned in. His words struck harder than she expected. I'm your wife. And a wife should add value, he snapped, not take. That night, she slept in the guest room downstairs. Greta and Dorian argued in hushed voices. She's not what I expected, Greta said. You said she had money. She does, Dorian hissed. She's just hiding it. Solene heard her name, her life being dissected like a spreadsheet. The final string of affections snapped. Sunday morning came with a chill in the air and tension in every corner. Greta's family arrived promptly at 10 o'clock for brunch. Solene dressed in silence, carefully choosing jeans and a blouse that wouldn't draw attention. She sat through the meal like a ghost, nodding, smiling, pretending. Her phone buzzed. Sarah, banks moving the timeline. Might be wise to start eviction. The message read. Dorian noticed. Who was that? He asked sharply. Just the hospital, she said. An extra shift. Liar, he hissed. I saw the name. Sarah? Why would she call you unless you interfered? Solene stood up. I don't know what you're talking about. Dorian followed, voice rising. What did you do? Tell the buyer something? Nate, please, she whispered, backing away. You're scaring me. Get out, he snarled, grabbing her arm. Pack your things and get out of my house. Solene stared at Dorian, his hand gripping her arm, eyes wild with rage. I took you in when no one else wanted you, he barked. I gave you everything. She yanked her arm free. You married me because you thought I had money. That's what this was about. The room went dead silent. Greta stood with a serving tray frozen in her hands. Dorian's cousin stared, unsure whether to leave or stay. You were always a burden, Dorian hissed. Then, for dramatic punctuation, he grabbed Soline's suitcase and hurled it down the stairs. It burst open, her belongings tumbling like a storm of fabric and memories. Soline stood still for a heartbeat, then descended slowly, head high. No one helped her gather her things. Not one person said a word. She walked out the door and didn't look back. The Sunset Motel, with its peeling paint and flickering sign, became Soline's shelter for 3 nights. The room smelled of cigarettes and despair. But for Soline, it was a sanctuary. She used a sliver of her inheritance to secure a small apartment across town, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen with creaky cabinets. It was hers. She picked up extra shifts at the hospital and disappeared from Dorian's life completely. 2 weeks later, the texts began, "We need to talk. The bank won't give me an extension. Sol, please. I made a mistake. This is your home too." She read them all. Replied to none. Soline met again with Leora, her attorney. "The property is yours," Leora confirmed, sliding the deed across the desk. "No mortgage. Clean title. Legally purchased through your company." "Then I want to sell," Soline said without hesitation. "Start fresh." Leora nodded. "I'll connect you with someone not tied to Dorian's contacts." A week later, a "for sale" sign appeared on the lawn at 782 Oakshade Lane. Soline watched from a distance as Dorian stormed outside in a panic. According to Sarah, he called their office 12 times that day. He threatened legal action, Sarah reported. But every document has his signature. Soline's smile was thin. Let him try. 3 days later, an above-asking offer came in with a quick closing window. Soline signed without hesitation. On a rainy Tuesday morning, a knock came at her apartment door. Through the peephole, she saw Greta, drenched, pale, stripped of her usual elegance. Against her better judgment, Soline opened the door. "I know what you did," Greta said. "You bought the house." "How?" "My parents weren't as broke as you assumed," Soline replied calmly. Greta's shoulders sagged. "We got the eviction notice. Nathaniel's falling apart. That house has been in our family since the 1950s. He was supposed to raise his children there." Soline raised a brow. "Children that will never be me and him." Greta's voice cracked. "Please, we need more time." "You had power," Soline replied. "You used it to crush me. I had hours and $200. Now you have 30 days and legal resources. You'll be fine." Greta tried again. "He still loves you. He's been a wreck since you left." "He loved what he thought I could give him," Soline said. "There's a difference.